Welcome to StoryGrove, where we share screen-free stories for kids without noisy advertisements. We hope you enjoy. Chapter 1. The Capital Limited gleamed beneath the late afternoon sun as it sat at the station, a long stretch of navy blue train cars trimmed in silver, ready to embark on its journey from Chicago to Washington, D.C. Its polished exterior mirrored the bustling crowd that swarmed the platform. Families with suitcases, business people checking their watches, and eager tourists snapping photos. Among the passengers weaving through the crowd were Sophie, Jack, and Emily Carter, siblings on their first ever overnight train ride. Their parents, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, were busy organising tickets and snacks, glancing between the kids and the towering train. "All right, kids," Mr. Carter said, handing them their boarding passes. "We're in car 5. Everyone ready for the adventure?" "Ready!" Sophie grinned, hoisting her backpack. Max adjusted his baseball cap, bouncing on his toes. "This is gonna be awesome." Emily gave a small nod, clearly nervous of the giant gleaming machine. Sophie, the oldest at 12, had a sharp eye for details and a notebook always tucked under her arm. She wore her brown hair in a neat braid and had a habit of observing everything, whether it was the pattern on the train seats, the way people spoke, or the slightest twitch of someone's expression. Her mind was like a camera, snapping mental photographs of anything unusual. Jack, 10 years old, had boundless curiosity and a knack for asking too many questions. His messy blonde hair and wide grin often earned him a forgiving chuckle from adults, even when he poked his nose where it didn't belong. Jack's pockets were filled with gadgets and trinkets, little things he picked up and couldn't resist fiddling with. Emily, 7, was small but fierce, trailing behind her older siblings with her stuffed penguin, Waddles, clutched tightly in one hand. She didn't say much, but had a way of quietly noticing things others missed, especially the details that seemed unimportant to everyone else. They climbed aboard, the cool air-conditioned interior a welcome relief from the summer heat outside. Plush navy blue seats lined either side of the aisle, their backs high and inviting. Large windows promised scenic views of rolling hills, small towns and bustling cities. The faint scent of coffee and new upholstery lingered in the air, blending with the distant scent of train grease and metal. As they made their way to their assigned seats, the train conductor, a tall man with a neat cap and a tidy moustache, greeted them cheerfully. "Welcome aboard, folks. Capital Limited, bound for Washington, D.C. Make yourselves comfortable." The kids slid into their seats by the window, eyes wide with excitement as the train rumbled to life and slowly pulled away from the station. The cityscape slipped by like a moving postcard, skyscrapers giving way to rows of brownstone houses, then parks and playgrounds, until finally the countryside opened up, vast and green, under a sky streaked with soft clouds. Jack pressed his nose to the glass. "Whoa! This is way better than driving!" Sophie flipped open her notebook and began jotting down observations. Seats are soft, conductor's moustache very neat, windows crystal clear, passengers mostly quiet so far. Emily stared wide-eyed at the trees zooming past, her grip on Waddles relaxing just a little. Chapter 2. As evening settled and the sky turned pink, the dining car beckoned with the promise of dinner. The family strolled down the gently swaying corridor, peering into the different train cars along the way. The dining car was a cosy, softly lit space, with booths lined in dark green vinyl and little white tablecloths. Silverware gleamed under warm lamps, and the smell of freshly baked bread and savoury soups filled the air. It didn't take long for Sophie to notice that the dining car had some particularly interesting passengers. At a corner table, seated alone, was a man in a crisp navy suit, Congressman Whitaker. His hair was perfectly combed, his glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, and he was typing furiously on a sleek silver laptop. He barely glanced up from the screen, even as the server brought him a plate of roast chicken. Across the aisle sat a mysterious woman wearing oversized sunglasses, even though the sun had long since dipped below the horizon. She wore a dark scarf knotted around her neck and was knitting something in bright red yarn. Her fingers moved fast, but the knitting looked more like an unravelled mess than any coherent shape. Jack leaned close to Sophie. Who knits with sunglasses on? Sophie scribbled a quick note. Woman with sunglasses, knitting something odd. Seems nervous. A few seats over, a young man with slicked back hair sat hunched over his phone. He wore a black leather jacket and kept tapping his foot under the table, glancing around the dining car every few seconds like he was waiting for something or someone. Further down, a family of tourists laughed loudly, passing plates of spaghetti and gesturing animatedly at the window. They spoke in a language Sophie couldn't quite identify, but their cheerful energy filled the space. And at the far end of the car sat a stern-looking elderly woman, her hair set in a silver bun, with a tiny, fluffy poodle perched neatly on her lap. The poodle had a rhinestone-studded collar and seemed to eye everyone suspiciously, just like its owner. Emily sat quietly, eyes darting from table to table, her expression thoughtful. "Think anyone here's famous?" Jack whispered, eyeing the woman with the poodle. Sophie shrugged but kept jotting notes. The train's gentle rocking made the clink of silverware sound almost like music. The Carters enjoyed their meal, but Sophie, Jack and Emily kept sneaking glances around, watching the passengers with growing curiosity. Chapter 3. After dinner, they returned to their seats, the train darkening as they passed through quiet countryside. The rhythm of the wheels on the tracks was soothing, and the soft flicker of overhead lights made the space feel cozy. Mr. Carter handed out travel pillows, while Mrs. Carter read aloud from a guidebook about all the monuments and museums they'd be visiting in Washington, D.C. But Sophie found herself distracted, her mind racing with thoughts about the curious passengers they'd seen. "Wonder why that man kept checking his phone," Jack mused, pulling a deck of cards from his bag. "Or why the knitting lady had sunglasses on at night," Sophie added. Emily yawned, hugging Waddles close. "Maybe she's hiding something?" The soft hum of conversation and the rhythmic sound of the train continued until, suddenly, the overhead speakers crackled to life. The conductor's voice, which had been cheerful earlier, now carried a much more serious tone. "Attention passengers. We regret to inform you that there has been an incident aboard the Capital Limited. One of our distinguished guests, Congressman Whitaker, has reported that his laptop has gone missing. We will be conducting an inquiry, and we ask that all passengers remain calm and stay in their assigned cars until further notice. Thank you." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the train. Heads popped up over seats, whispers spreading like wildfire. Mr. Carter exchanged glances with Mrs. Carter. "A missing laptop? That's not good." Jack's eyes widened. "A stolen laptop on a train." Emily's fingers tightened around Waddles. Sophie's pen flew across her notebook, mystery. She underlined it twice. She glanced at her siblings. "Looks like we've got ourselves something interesting after all." The Capital Limited rocked steadily on, but the air inside had shifted. Something important had gone missing, and Sophie, Jack, and Emily were already determined to figure out what happened. Chapter 4. The hum of the train wheels echoed like a steady heartbeat through the Capital Limited, but the mood inside had shifted dramatically since the conductor's announcement. Passengers spoke in hushed voices, glancing over shoulders, casting curious or suspicious looks at one another. Sophie, Jack, and Emily huddled in their seats, heads together like detectives on a secret mission. "Okay," Sophie whispered, flipping open her notebook. "We need to make a list. Everyone who might have had a chance to swipe the congressman's laptop." Jack grinned, leaning in. "I vote for the lady with the sunglasses. She looks super shady." Emily nodded thoughtfully, clutching Waddles. "Or the man who kept checking his phone." Sophie scribbled at the top of a fresh page, suspects. First there was the woman with sunglasses, who was always knitting. Such odd behaviour, and keeps to herself. Second, the man with phone, always nervous, tapping his foot, checking surroundings. "And we shouldn't forget," Jack added, glancing around. "There's always a chance it's someone we didn't notice before." Sophie nodded. "Exactly. We can't jump to conclusions. Let's gather clues first." They decided to make their first move discreetly. Chapter 5. At breakfast the next morning, they took a seat near the dining car entrance, ensuring they had a clear view of everyone coming and going. The woman with sunglasses was already there, sipping tea and still knitting furiously. Jack watched her carefully. I bet she's hiding something, he murmured. Sophie observed her movements, noting how she barely looked up from her yarn. Emily tilted her head, noticing something small. Every few minutes, the woman adjusted her scarf nervously, like she was checking something underneath. Sophie jotted it down. Next came the young man with slicked-back hair, seated alone, glancing anxiously at the window. He kept pulling out his phone, glancing at it, frowning, and then stuffing it back in his pocket. "Think he's texting someone about the laptop," Jack whispered. "Maybe," Sophie replied, noting, man with phone, restless, distracted. Suddenly, the congressman himself appeared, escorted by a member of the train crew. He looked tired, his suit slightly rumpled, and his glasses pushed down his nose. Emily watched as the congressman spoke in low tones to the crew member, gesturing toward his cabin car. "Think they're checking everyone's bags?" Jack asked. "Probably," Sophie murmured, "but no one seems to be acting like they've found anything yet." Chapter 6. Later that morning, Sophie decided they needed to ask a few questions. She approached the conductor when he passed by their car, tipping his cap politely. "Excuse me?" she began, trying to sound casual. "Have they found the laptop yet?" The conductor smiled kindly. "I'm afraid not, miss. But rest assured, the crew is handling the situation." Jack leaned forward. "Do you think it was stolen?" The conductor chuckled softly. "That's not for me to say, young man. Could have been misplaced, could have been taken. Either way, you kids just focus on enjoying the ride." He tipped his cap again and moved on. Sophie frowned. "They're not going to take us seriously." "We'll just have to investigate without their help," Jack said, determination flashing in his eyes. They made their way back to a place where they could have more privacy. Back in their car, they whispered plans. "Okay," Sophie said, flipping to a clean page. "We need to focus on who had access to the congressman's car." They recalled that during dinner, almost everyone had passed through that area at some point. Jack drew a rough map of the train, circling spots where the congressman had been seated. Emily, thoughtful as always, piped up. "What about the staff? They can go everywhere." Sophie nodded, jotting down staff, conductors, servers, crew. Jack grinned. "Maybe the poodle lady's dog took it." Sophie rolled her eyes but added, "Elderly woman with poodle, observant, stern." By lunchtime, their suspect list looked like this. Number 1, woman knitting with sunglasses. Number 2, nervous man with the phone. Number 3, elderly woman with poodle. Number 4, train crew and staff. Number 5, any passenger near the congressman during dinner. They decided to watch more closely after lunch, making note of any odd behaviours. Chapter 7. While walking through the lounge car, Sophie accidentally bumped into a server carrying a tray of drinks. She apologised quickly, but the server smiled kindly. "No worries, dear. You kids seem like you're on quite the adventure." Jack blurted out, "We're trying to figure out who took the congressman's laptop." Sophie elbowed him, but to their surprise, the server leaned closer. "Between you and me," he whispered conspiratorially, "I've seen some odd things. That man with the phone, he was in the baggage car late last night. Said he lost something, but he was acting jumpy." Sophie's eyes widened. "Thank you." She scribbled down the new clue immediately. Chapter 8. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm orange glow through the expansive windows of the Capital Limited. The gentle sway of the train and the rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks had become a comforting backdrop to Sophie, Jack, and Emily's sleuthing efforts. Their notebook was filling fast. Sophie flipped to a fresh page and underlined the title, Clues and Suspicions. Jack leaned over. "Okay, we've got 5 main suspects, but we still don't have solid proof about any of them." Emily hugged Waddles tightly. "What if we ask questions without making it obvious?" Sophie nodded thoughtfully. "We'll split up. Jack, you can talk to the guy with the phone. Emily and I will keep an eye on the lady with the sunglasses. Let's meet back in the lounge car after." A little while later, Jack timed his move perfectly. The young man with slicked back hair had settled into a booth in the observation car, scrolling endlessly through his phone. Jack grabbed a soda from the snack counter and casually slid into the booth across from him. "Cool phone," Jack said, acting nonchalant. The man barely glanced up. Thanks. Bet you have lots of games on there, or maybe secret files. Jack grinned. The man gave a tight smile, clearly uninterested. Just checking work emails. Jack tilted his head. Funny, my dad says he never works on vacations. The man shifted, closing his phone. Some of us don't get vacations, kid. Jack made a mental note of the man's tense body language before hopping up. Well, good luck with your emails. He wandered off, pretending to be uninterested but burning with curiosity. Chapter 9. Meanwhile, Emily and Sophie found seats near the woman with sunglasses, who had now moved to the lounge car, still knitting furiously. Sophie struck up a conversation with Emily loud enough for the woman to overhear. Some people say knitting helps them relax. Others say it keeps their hands busy when they're nervous. The woman's hands didn't pause, but she glanced sideways. I bet people see all sorts of things on a train, Sophie continued. Things they maybe shouldn't. At last the woman spoke. It's true. You keep your eyes open. You notice everything. Sophie smiled sweetly. Anything unusual lately? The woman shrugged, but Sophie noticed her grip on the knitting needles tighten. Emily, without missing a beat, pointed to the scarf. That's an interesting pattern. The woman looked down. It's a mess, really. Haven't had much focus. Sophie jotted down, nervous, distracted, watching others. Chapter 10. Later that evening, as they regrouped, the conductor strolled past their seats and paused. Kids, I've noticed you've been doing a lot of observing. Sophie felt her heart thump. We're just curious. The conductor's tone was kind but firm. Best leave the investigation to the adults. Wouldn't want you getting yourselves into trouble. They nodded politely, but once he moved on, Jack leaned in. We're getting close. He's worried. Later. That night, unable to sleep, Sophie wandered toward the lounge car. The train was quiet, lights dimmed, shadows flickering softly against the walls. As she passed near the baggage car door, voices caught her attention. They still don't know, a man's voice whispered, but we need to act before they reach DC. Her heart pounded. She pressed herself against the wall, straining to hear more, but the voices faded. She hurried back to the cabin, shaking Jack awake. Someone's planning something, she whispered. We're running out of time. Chapter 11. By breakfast, the siblings had added new entries to their notebook. Man with phone, suspicious behaviour, late-night baggage car visit. Woman with sunglasses, nervous listening in. Overheard whisper near baggage car. Their list of suspects seemed stronger, but the pieces still weren't quite fitting together. We need more, Sophie muttered. Something solid. Jack grinned. Let's up our game. Emily nodded, determined. The Capital Limited rolled on toward Washington, and the Carters knew they had to crack the mystery before the train pulled into the station. Later that morning, sunlight poured through the wide windows of the Capital Limited, casting soft stripes across the carpeted floor. The Carter kids sat hunched over their notebook at a table in the lounge car, their list of clues and suspects growing longer and more tangled by the minute. Okay, Sophie said, tapping her pencil thoughtfully. We've got the woman with sunglasses who's always watching, the man with the phone who was in the baggage car at night, and now we've overheard someone plotting something. Jack leaned forward. What if the guy with the phone is a spy or something? Maybe he's trying to sell the congressman's secrets. Emily shuddered. And the woman with sunglasses might be helping him. Sophie nodded. We can't ignore the crew either, but we've seen too many signs pointing to that man. The question is, how do we catch him without anyone thinking we're just meddling kids? Chapter 12. After lunch, the three siblings sat in their seats, quietly observing everyone around them. Sophie noticed the woman with the sunglasses walking briskly toward the observation car, her scarf fluttering slightly. A few moments later, the man with the phone stood up, glanced around and followed. Jack nudged Sophie. Now's our chance. Let's follow them. They rose and made their way through the gently rocking corridor, careful to keep a safe distance. As they stepped into the observation car, they spotted the man seated near the far end, his back to the door. He glanced around nervously, clearly waiting for something. The woman with sunglasses sat a few rows ahead of him, knitting as always, but her shoulders seemed tense, and she kept flicking her gaze toward the man. Jack and Emily took seats by the window, while Sophie leaned against the doorway, her notebook in hand. Minutes ticked by. The man stood, glanced around again, and walked toward a small luggage storage compartment near the back of the car. He pulled something out of his jacket, something slim and metallic, and slipped it into the storage locker, locking it with a small key. Sophie's heart pounded. "Did you see that?" she whispered to Jack and Emily as she scribbled notes. Jack grinned. "I bet that's the laptop." Minutes later, and back in their car, the kids huddled together. "Okay," Sophie said. "Here's what we know. He was in the baggage car at night. He's been acting nervous, checking his phone constantly. And now he's hiding something in a locker." Emily clutched Waddles. "Should we tell the conductor?" Jack nodded. "If we don't, someone might get away with it." Sophie took a deep breath. "All right, let's go." Chapter 13. They found the conductor walking through car 5, checking tickets. Sophie stepped forward, her voice steady. "Sir, we think we know who took the congressman's laptop." The conductor raised an eyebrow, pausing. "Oh? And how's that?" Sophie quickly explained what they'd seen, how the man had hidden something in the locker and all the suspicious behaviour they'd noticed. Jack added, "He's been acting nervous the whole trip. We think he's up to something." The conductor listened patiently, then nodded. "All right, kids, let's take a look." Together, they walked to the observation car. The man was still there, scrolling through his phone. The conductor approached him calmly. "Sir, I need to ask you to open the locker you used earlier." The man looked up, surprised, but after a moment's hesitation, he pulled a small key from his pocket and unlocked the compartment. Inside were a few personal items, a folded jacket, a travel magazine, a half-empty bag of snacks, but no laptop. The man frowned. "Is there a problem?" The conductor turned back to the kids. "I'm sorry, but there's nothing unusual here." Sophie felt her stomach sink. "But we—" The conductor gave them a polite but firm smile. "I appreciate your concern, but let's leave the investigation to the staff, all right?" The man gave them a dismissive glance before sitting back down, returning to his phone. The 3 siblings walked back to their seats in silence. Chapter 14. They slumped into their seats, deflated. "I was sure," Jack muttered, staring at the floor. "We followed all the clues." Emily hugged Waddles tightly, her brow furrowed. "Maybe we were wrong." Sophie flipped through her notebook, her mind racing. "But everything pointed to him. It still doesn't make sense." She stared out the window as the countryside rolled by, thoughts swirling like the trees flashing past. "Maybe we missed something," she whispered. Jack sighed. "Maybe we're just kids. No one's going to take us seriously anyway." But Sophie wasn't ready to give up. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sophie wandered back toward the lounge car. The rhythmic rocking of the train felt almost hypnotic, but her mind was still buzzing. As she passed near the baggage car, she caught sight of a figure slipping through the door. Quiet, careful. Her heart skipped a beat. She glanced around, making sure no one was watching, then crept closer, pressing herself against the wall to listen. A voice, low and hurried, floated through the door. "Midnight stop. Hand off. They'll never suspect." Sophie's eyes widened. She darted back to find Jack and Emily, breathless with urgency. "I think I just heard something. Something big." They exchanged glances. Whatever they'd missed before, they had one last chance to figure it out before the train reached DC. Chapter 15. The sun had set, leaving the Capital Limited shrouded in shadows, its glowing interior lights the only illumination against the darkened countryside. The rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks pulsed steadily. But inside car 5, Sophie, Jack and Emily sat in silence, their notebook forgotten on the table. Jack tapped his pencil against the table. "I can't believe we were wrong." Emily hugged Waddles tightly, staring at the window. "Maybe we're just kids. Maybe no one listens to kids." But Sophie wasn't ready to give up. Something gnawed at her. The clues fit too well. There had to be something they'd missed. She flipped open her notebook, reviewing every note: the man's nervous behavior, the locker, the woman knitting furiously, the overheard conversation near the baggage car. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. "Wait a minute," she whispered. Jack and Emily leaned in. "What if—" Sophie's brow furrowed. "What if he didn't hide the laptop in that locker? What if it was a decoy? Something to throw us off?" Jack blinked. You think he's hiding it somewhere else?" Emily tilted her head. "Maybe he has help." Sophie nodded, flipping back through her notes. "Remember the woman with sunglasses? She's always nearby. And that conversation I overheard by the baggage car, it mentioned a handoff." Jack's eyes widened. "What if they're working together?" Sophie tapped her notebook. "Exactly. And the baggage car is the only place that's mostly unattended at night." Determined, the siblings waited until the train quieted, most passengers dozing or reading quietly. They slipped out of their seats and made their way toward the baggage car. The corridor felt longer at night, the steady sway of the train making their footsteps sound louder. They reached the door to the baggage area and paused. Jack glanced nervously at Sophie. "What's the plan?" Sophie took a deep breath and, "We need to see if they're meeting there. If we're right, they'll try to move the laptop during the night before we reach Washington." They edged closer, careful not to be seen. Voices drifted from the baggage car, 2 of them. "Just wait until the next stop. Smooth handoff, no one the wiser." Sophie's heart pounded. She peeked through a small window and saw the man with the phone and the woman with sunglasses standing by a large duffel bag. The man pulled something sleek and silver from inside, a laptop. Jack's eyes widened. "It's the congressman's laptop!" They ducked back behind the door, hearts racing. "What do we do now?" Emily whispered. Sophie thought fast. "We need the conductor, but we can't let them leave the car." They raced back through the train, dodging sleepy passengers, until they spotted the conductor near the dining car. "Sir!" Sophie called, breathless. "We just saw them. The man with the phone and the woman with sunglasses. They have the laptop in the baggage car." The conductor frowned. "Now, kids, I told you—" Jack interrupted. "Please, we're serious. We heard them planning a handoff." The conductor hesitated, then nodded. "Show me." Chapter 16. The 3 siblings led the conductor back toward the baggage car. Quietly, he radioed another crew member to approach from the other side, blocking any escape. They waited behind the door as the conductor peered through the window, eyes narrowing. "Stay here," he whispered to the kids. The conductor and the crew member entered quickly, catching the man and woman off guard. "Well, well," the conductor said sternly. "Care to explain why you're in the baggage car after hours?" The man stammered. We were just—" The woman tried to speak, but the conductor motioned to the duffel bag. Inside, the sleek silver laptop lay nestled between clothes. The crew member retrieved it and confirmed it matched the congressman's description. The conductor shook his head. "Looks like our young detectives were right all along." Chapter 17. By the time the Capital Limited rolled into Washington, D.C., word of the kids' sleuthing had spread throughout the train. Passengers congratulated them, and even the congressman himself came to thank them personally. "I can't thank you enough," he said, shaking Sophie's hand. "You saved some very important information." The conductor grinned. "I've never seen sharper detectives aboard the Capital Limited." Jack puffed out his chest. "Told you we knew what we were doing." Emily smiled shyly, holding Waddles tight. As they stepped off the train and into the busy station, Sophie glanced at her siblings, a grin spreading across her face. "Guess it's true," she said. "Never underestimate kids." An hour later, the morning sun bathed Washington, D.C. in a warm, golden light as the Capital Limited rolled to a smooth stop at Union Station. The station bustled with travellers, families pulling luggage, tourists snapping photos, and business people hurrying to their next destination. But amid the usual crowd, something special awaited Sophie, Jack, and Emily Carter. As they stepped off the train, blinking at the bright morning, they spotted Congressman Whitaker standing near the platform. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood several news reporters, flashing cameras, and even a few security officials. The congressman approached with a broad smile. There they are, the heroes of the Capital Limited, he said warmly. The siblings exchanged glances, surprised. We just paid attention, Sophie said modestly, gripping her notebook. Jack grinned. And asked a lot of questions. Emily hugged Waddles tightly, her cheeks flushed pink. Congressman Whitaker chuckled. Well, you three saved the day. Without your sharp eyes and quick thinking, we might never have recovered that laptop. Some very important information was on it, and you've protected far more than you realize. He motioned to the gathered reporters, who began snapping photos and asking the kids questions about their adventure. The conductor, now standing nearby, gave them a proud nod. One reporter leaned down. What's your secret, kids? How do you manage to crack the case? Sophie smiled. We just notice things. Little details. People don't always expect kids to notice. Jack added. Plus, we stuck together. Emily nodded, barely whispering, and never gave up. The congressman held up 3 official certificates. As a small token of appreciation, I'd like to present each of you with a special commendation from my office, recognizing your bravery, persistence, and outstanding detective work. The kids beamed as they accepted the certificates. Around them, the passengers from the train cheered, some even clapping them on the back. Later, as they left the station with their parents, Mr. Carter turned to them, smiling proudly. Looks like this vacation turned out to be more exciting than we expected. Sophie tucked her notebook safely under her arm. I'd say so. Jack grinned. Think we'll get to solve another mystery someday? Emily glanced back at the Capital Limited, shimmering in the morning light. I hope so. And as they walked into the bustling city, it was clear that this wouldn't be the last adventure for the Carter kids. Thanks for listening to today's story. We hope you enjoyed it and feel calm and cozy. If you'd like more screen-free, ad-free and wholesome stories, don't forget to follow our channel. Or hop on over to our YouTube channel for even more wholesome screen-free tales. See you next time.